Today was the day where the thing that we have been talking about for months finally happened.
On this vote, the yeas are 234, the nays are 188. The motion is adopted.
The motion in question was the Bush-era tax cuts. Today, Democrats in the House voted to extend the Bush tax cuts, and Republicans voted not to. House Republicans, all but 3 of them, voted against tax cuts. Do not adjust your TV machine. Those numbers are correct. It was Republicans, 168 Republicans, who voted today in favor of letting the Bush tax cuts expire. Democrats voted to extend the Bush tax cuts. Republicans voted for everyone's taxes to go up.
Republicans are holding these tax cuts for the middle class hostage, demanding an extra tax cut of $700 billion worth of bailout for millionaires and billionaires.
In this piece of legislation, everyone gets a tax cut. Even billionaires will get a tax cut up to $250,000. You have never communicated it because you've never told the total truth.
This is so grossly unfair. It is so grossly unfair. I can't imagine that my colleagues on the Republican side don't want to give a tax cut to the middle class. Why don't they just vote for that?
After this last election, with Republicans marching into Washington to say, we're here to cut taxes, they just voted for everybody's taxes to go up, which, of course, is driving them crazy.
Trying to catch my breath so I don't refer to this this maneuver going on today as chicken crap, all right? But this is nonsense, all right?
Actually, it's you voting to raise everybody's taxes. If Congress does not pass an extension of the Bush tax cuts, which the House was able to do today despite the Republicans, then all of the Bush tax cuts go away at midnight on New Year's Eve. Republicans in the House today said that if they can't get the bonus they want for the richest people in the country, for income over $250,000 a year, then they don't want tax cuts for anybody. Republicans want everybody's taxes to go up on New Year's Eve, unless they can get what they want, which is a specific tax cut for income over $250,000. In addition to putting themselves on the record today voting for a tax increase for the entire country, the man who will be the new Republican Speaker of the House also just did something that he said emphatically he would not do.
If the only option I have is to vote for some of those tax reductions, I'll vote for them. If the only option I have is to vote for those at 250 and below, of course I'm going to do that.
Of course, he did not do that. He didn't do that, even though he said he would. That was exactly the option he was given today. If the only option I have is to vote for those at 250 and below, of course I'm going to do that. That's the option he had today, and that is not what he did. He did not do what he said he was going to do.
Trying to catch my breath so I don't refer to this this maneuver going on today as chicken crap, all right? But this is nonsense, all right?
Today, Ezra Klein at the Washington Post helpfully documented the difference between chicken crap and what John Boehner apparently wants now. He says there are 238,781 households in John Boehner's district. There are 2,824 of them with an income above $200,000. That's 1.1%. Many of those people make between $200,000 and $250,000. So every dollar of their income will be eligible for the tax cuts the Democrats are pushing, which the Republicans voted against today. So in all likelihood, what separates a tax cut bill that is chicken crap from a tax cut bill that's great is its treatment of the richest 1% of households in John Boehner's district. If he can't get something extra for that 1%, then everybody gets their taxes raised. So says John Boehner.
Chicken crap, all right?
What happens next is that this tax cuts issue moves over to the Senate, where the Republican position is the same as the position in the House. They don't want tax cuts for anybody unless they can get this bonus thereafter for the richest people in the country. We have been talking about this issue for months. The country has been debating it for months. And now it is finally on the table. Republicans in the Senate are planning to filibuster tax cuts for everyone in the country. That's what's on the table. Republicans are threatening to filibuster tax cuts for everyone in the country if they don't get a special bonus for millionaires and billionaires. A special tax cut just for them, just on income over $250,000. So what happens next? Last night on this program, Democratic Senator Debbie Stabenow of Michigan made some news telling us that, quote, the vast majority of Senate Democrats want to do what Democrats in the House did today. They want to call the Republicans bluff. They want to make Republicans decide if they really are going to vote against tax cuts for everybody, because they won't also get a bonus for millionaires and billionaires. Tonight, it appears that Senate Democrats are prepared to call Republicans bluff. NBC's Ken Strickland reporting that Senate Democratic leaders are now making plans to hold a vote, possibly as early as tomorrow, on the tax cut bill that was passed by the House earlier today. All week, progressive groups have been putting pressure on Democrats to get tough on this issue. Groups like the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, whose ad you see here, as well as MoveOn.org. They're calling specifically on the White House, specifically on President Obama, to not cave to Republicans on this issue.
President Obama.
Hi, Barack.
Mr. President Obama.
What up, B?
Hi, I'm Monique. This is Allie. I'm asking for her. You stand tough and you don't extend these tax cuts to the richest Americans.
I voted for you back in 2008.
We voted for you because for the first time in our lifetime, a politician was actually laying out a plan that reinforced the values that we've come to believe in as Americans.
I want to say thank you for all the hard work that you do.
But we, the people, want you back and need you back.
What's happened to that bold, progressive man he elected president in 2008?
The guy who stands for all the people and is not going to let himself get pushed around.
Mr. President, please do not compromise with the Republicans about extending the Bush tax cuts.
I am in the highest tax bracket. We don't need the money. The country does.
You said in your campaign speech that enough is enough and it's time to fight. Please fight. I'm willing to fight with you.
This is not liberals pressuring the president to do something that the president does not want to do. The president has been among the most forceful and articulate advocates of this policy in the past because it's his own policy. This, for example, is from his campaign in 2008.
On taxes, John McCain and I have very different ideas. If you make less than $250,000 a year, you won't see your taxes raised 1 penny under my plan. Instead of extending the Bush tax cuts for the wealthiest, I'll focus on you.
I'll focus on you. So he said, will he do it? Will he encourage Senate Democrats to do it? As this debate moves into the Senate, Democrats have all the leverage. If Republicans don't vote to extend the Bush tax cuts because they're holding out for this special favor that only applies to the highest income people in the country, then the Bush tax cuts will expire. They will expire because of the Republican Party's filibuster. And Republicans will then have to explain to voters and to their whole base why they used a procedural trick in the Senate to force a tax hike on the entire country. Or Republicans can go along with what has been the president's plan all along. A plan that also happens to slice $700 billion off the national debt. If the White House and Senate Democrats can somehow resist their innate urge to fold inexplicably, the hand that they are holding here is incredibly strong. Joining us now is New York Times columnist Gail Collins. She is author of the book When Everything Changed, The Amazing Journey of American Women from 1960 to the Present. Gail, thanks very much for being here.
Good to be here. I like this bonus thing you're doing, the bonus for millionaires. This is very cool.
Well, in talking about tax cuts, there's an inherent wordiness that comes into any description that I think occludes any ability to make a political point about it. But because the differences between the two parties' positions are the Democrats say all income under $250,000 gets a tax cut, and the Republicans say, no, we don't think that's good enough. We don't want those tax cuts to go through at all unless we get a tax cut for income over $250,000.
The bonus.
It is sort of a bonus.
Yeah.
They want to, because it's not that 98% of people in the country get a tax cut. Everybody gets a tax cut on the first $250,000 of their income. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Do you think it's important that the House pass this today?
Yeah, you got to stand up for something once in a while. If this is not what Democrats represent, then what the thing on not having loud TV commercials. I mean, there's nothing, if this doesn't work, there's nothing else there that makes any difference.
Although not having loud TV commercials would get people out in the streets, I think.
This is true.
It's a new civil rights movement against loud commercials. There is new reporting tonight from Huffington Post that Senate Democrats are meeting tonight to fake vote on this, to test votes on this. What do you think the fake test results are going to be?
I don't know, but if you just watch the Democrats in the Senate in action, I have doubts that they can really rally they certainly can't rally all their people. They could rally 51, I bet. But if Barack Obama came out and said, here's what I believe, go team, that could make a huge difference.
One issue here is what happens if people do cross the line. If they draw a line in the sand and it is crossed, meaning that they decide, you know what, we're not going to compromise. If you want to let these Bush tax cuts expire, they're going to expire. Couldn't they then pass a retroactive fix to that somewhere in the next Congress?
They could. I mean, their argument is that will make everybody nervous and it'll hurt the economy. That's what all the arguments are. But if you can make this clear, if you can really draw the line clearly so that we're not really arguing next week about what Ben Nelson is going to do in Nebraska, but really about, okay, this is the Democratic position, and take that in the Senate. And I would love to see if it's really clear to the people in America that this is what we're voting on, the bonus for the millionaires. I'd like to see Scott Brown in Massachusetts, defend that when he goes up before the people again. I'd like to see him explain why he voted for bonuses for millionaires.
I feel like the Republicans, though, are hazing Scott Brown. They keep hearing that argument from Democrats or from liberals, from people who aren't on the Republican side on specific policy issues. So then they made Scott Brown be the one to go out and object to unanimous consent for unemployment benefits.
Killed the unemployment compensation bill, yes.
Yeah.
That was, while yelling about the food safety bill, while complaining that he had been dragged back to Washington to vote on this food safety bill, which poisoned food. Who cares? I mean, it was just very strange, very, very strange.
So I almost feel like every time a Republican gets mentioned as a potential crossover vote on a moderate issue, that the Republicans are doing everything they can to rope them back in. Is there any process like that on the Democratic side? We've obviously seen, as the Democratic tent got bigger, as they elected these huge majorities, a huge amount of dissent, no unity whatsoever, no standing shoulder to shoulder on the Democratic side. Is it possible that will arise now that the Republicans have really given them a scare in this last election?
It's frankly easier to do it in the negative than it is to do it in the positive.
What do you mean?
If you're in the minority and you're just stopping things, it's always easier to argue. I mean, everybody knows that. You almost never lose points for being against something.
Right.
You can always argue that it could be done better, or it could be done later, or we need more discussion, or the procedure is wrong, or something else. So it's a much harder thing to get people together on the plus. Plus, the Democrats in this last election ran around wildly campaigning for people whose ads had them shooting holes in the
Democratic legislation,
in the clean air bill. I mean, my good Lord! I mean, so it's hard. It's hard to. They're harder to rope in right now than the Republicans are.
Briefly, let me ask you about the effect of the Democratic base on that process. Seeing that ad from Progressive Change Campaign Committee from MoveOn.org, the left is trying to shove President Obama specifically towards sticking to his campaign pledges on this. Does that help? Does that help with Democratic unity?
I think it can't hurt. The problem difference is that for the Republicans, they're terrified now if they don't they don't always vote against tax cuts and stuff like that. Somebody from the Tea Party will run against them and primary them. I don't think the Democrats have that fear right now that they're going to be primaried from the left.
Well, attention, Tea Party. All but 3 members of the House who are Republicans voted to raise taxes on the entire country today.
You tell them.
I'm sure they're all watching. New York Times columnist Gail Collins, it is always such a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for coming in.
It's always great to be here.